They say home is where the heart is, but what happens when the heart of a place is poisoned? Not by outsiders, but by the people you thought you could trust. I came back to Marin Bay looking for peace, for a piece of myself. I thought I'd left behind on some faraway battlefield. Instead, I found a war waiting for me right here in my own backyard. It wasn't fought with bullets or bombs. No. This war was quieter, colder. Fought with signatures on forged papers, with whispers behind closed doors, with fear hidden behind smiles. They thought they could break me. They thought I would fold, walk away, leave them to carve up the town for profit. But they forgot something important. I know how to stand my ground, and some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The wind off the Pacific was warm that morning, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers through the open windows of Lucas Grant's seaside home. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, a mug of black coffee in hand, watching the waves roll in. After 10 years in the Marines and 2 more drifting from city to city, Lucas had finally come back to Marin Bay, the one place that still felt like it might be home. The old Grant estate. A weathered but proud house, perched on a cliff's edge, needed work. But Lucas didn't mind. He needed the peace, or so he thought. The first rumble was so deep, he felt it in his chest before he heard it. Frowning, he set his mug down and stepped onto the front porch. His heart sank. 3 massive bulldozers idled, just outside the newly repaired iron gates. Behind them stood a line of construction workers in neon vests and hard hats like soldiers awaiting orders. At the center of it all, arms crossed and expression smug, stood Nathan Cross, the self-proclaimed president of the Marine Bay Community Association. Lucas felt the first flicker of anger spark in his chest. He recognized Cross from the handful of town meetings he'd reluctantly attended. A man with too much power and too little conscience. Lucas moved down the steps, his bare feet silent on the sun-warmed stone. "Can I help you?" he called, voice steady but sharp. Cross didn't smile. Instead, he pulled a folded paper from his jacket and waved it lazily in the air. "This property," Cross said loudly for everyone to hear, "is in violation of community codes, landscaping violations, unauthorized fencing, non-compliant renovations. We're here to enforce a demolition order." Lucas's jaw tightened. "You must be mistaken. This land isn't under your HOA jurisdiction." Cross chuckled, as if Lucas had told a particularly stupid joke. "Our records say otherwise. Now step aside." The lead bulldozer growled treads, grinding against the gravel driveway. The men behind Cross shifted eager. The hot sun made the tension feel heavier, like the whole world was holding its breath. Lucas took another step forward, placing himself directly in the bulldozer's path. "I have official deeds," he said, voice low but firm. "This property has been independent since 1957. You're trespassing." Cross's eyes gleamed. "Paperwork's easy to forge, enforcement isn't." The bulldozer's engine roared to life, louder now, a metallic growl that sent vibrations through the soles of Lucas's feet. Dust kicked up in swirling clouds. Lucas's pulse hammered. He knew if they started now, it would be nearly impossible to undo the damage. He reached for his phone with shaking fingers, desperate for a lifeline. But before he could dial, a black SUV tore around the corner and skidded to a stop in front of the estate. 4 figures in dark suits piled out, moving with precision. The lead agent, a woman with sharp eyes and a tighter grip on reality than anyone else present, flashed a badge that caught the sun in a harsh glare. "Federal agents," she barked, "step away from the property immediately." The workers froze. Cross's smirk faltered. Lucas let out a shaky breath. He hadn't realized he'd been holding Agent Julia Marks, strode forward, towering over Cross, despite being half a head shorter. "You are trespassing on federal land. This estate is protected under the Coastal Preservation Trust. Any attempt to alter it constitutes a federal offense." Cross paled. His hand crumpled the paper in his fist. "This is a mistake," he stammered. "No," Marks said sharply, "it's a crime." The bulldozer operator killed the engine with a rattling cough. Silence fell over the driveway, thick and absolute. Lucas felt the shift happen, power bleeding away from Cross, grounding itself firmly back in his own hands. He wasn't alone. Not anymore, but deep inside, a new tension brewed. If Cross had pushed this far with forged papers and heavy machinery, there had to be something, or someone, far more dangerous pulling the strings. Lucas narrowed his eyes, the wind whipping around him like a warning. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And whatever game had just begun, he intended to see it through to the very end. The silence that followed the federal agent's arrival didn't last long. Within hours, the bulldozers had rumbled away. Cross had been forced off the property under stern warning, and Lucas stood alone in his driveway, staring at the deep gouges left in the gravel. Agent Julia Marks lingered behind clipboard, in hand sunglasses perched atop her head. She studied Lucas for a long moment before speaking. "This was coordinated," she said, her voice low. "Cross wouldn't risk federal charges without backup." Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. "Backup, like who?" Marks hesitated. "We're about to find out." Over the next few days, a quiet war unfolded beneath the surface. Of Marin Bay FBI investigators discovered that the demolition order Cross had waived wasn't just fake. It had been signed off at the city records office, bearing the seal of authenticity. Someone inside the city government had validated a forged document. The news hit Lucas harder than he expected. He had grown up believing Marin Bay was different, small, honest. The kind of town where people looked you in the eye when they lied. Now even the land his family had protected for generations wasn't safe from greed. One evening, Lucas met Agent Marks at a dusty corner of the town library, away from prying eyes. Marks slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photos, signatures, transaction logs, evidence linking Mayor William Harlow to a real estate development group headquartered out of Portland. The scheme was simple. Fake violations seize land under the guise of community development. Sell it to private investors for massive profit. Lucas leaned back, hands trembling slightly. His estate wasn't just another casualty, it was a cornerstone of a much larger, dirtier plan. "They were never after you," Marks said, her voice gentler now. "They were after what you stand on." Lucas closed the folder slowly, his heart twisted with a painful mix of betrayal and fury. His family's legacy reduced to a line item in someone else's business deal. "I'm not letting this happen," he said, his voice low but ironclad. Marks nodded once. "Good. Because it's about to get uglier." Across town, Nathan Cross wasn't retreating quietly. Rumors spread like wildfire. Lucas was a squatter, a criminal, an outsider trying to steal land, meant for the town's future. Flyers appeared on telephone poles overnight. Local news outlets, some quietly funded by the same developers, ran hit pieces questioning Lucas's legal ownership. The community Lucas had hoped to rejoin now viewed him with wary, suspicious eyes. At the farmers' market, neighbors who once smiled now crossed the street to avoid him. At the coffee shop, whispers fell silent when he entered. Lucas carried it like another old scar, heavier than any shrapnel he had taken overseas. He knew the truth, but the truth didn't always win. It had to be fought for, earned. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, Lucas stood alone on his porch, feeling the weight of the town's judgment pressing against him. Somewhere in the dark, he knew Nathan Cross and William Harlow were preparing their next move. And this time it wouldn't just be bulldozers. It would be lawyers, courts, smear campaigns. Lucas tightened his grip on the old iron railing until his knuckles whitened. They thought they could break him. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The storm was coming, and Lucas Grant was ready to meet it head-on. The town hall was packed. It smelled like sweat, anger, and something heavier, fear. Lucas sat in the back row, jaw tight, fists clenched in his lap. At the podium, Mayor William Harlow smiled thinly, speaking about progress, about revitalization, weaving lies with the easy rhythm of a man who had told them so many times he almost believed them himself. Nathan Cross hovered near the mayor's arms, crossed head high, casting quick glances around the room like a man daring someone to challenge him. For weeks, they had been winning, They had painted Lucas as a villain, a threat to the future of Marin Bay. The bulldozers might have retreated, but the real attack had been words, fear, and manipulation. The community had bought it. Or at least they had wanted to. Lucas had stayed silent, waiting. Tonight, that silence ended as the mayor launched into another sermon about uncooperative property owners. The side doors slammed open, 3 federal agents strode in, Agent Julia Marks at the front, a file tucked tightly under her arm. The room fell silent. The mayor's smile faltered. Agent Marks didn't waste time. She marched straight to the podium, placed the file down with a heavy thump, and turned to the crowd. "We have uncovered substantial evidence," she said, voice cutting clean through the tension, "that proves Mayor William Harlow and Nathan Cross conspired to forge official documents illegally, seize protected lands, and personally profit from their sale to private developers." Gasps echoed through the hall. The mayor laughed, a sharp, desperate sound. "This is absurd," he barked. "Baseless accusations." Agent Marks opened the file. One by one, she laid out photographs. Scanned copies of falsified court orders, secret emails between city officials and real estate moguls, wire transfer receipts flowing into offshore accounts, facts. Cold hard, undeniable. Lucas watched the faces in the crowd shift. Confusion giving way to horror bleeding into anger. People he had once called neighbors now realized they had been pawns in someone else's game. The sheriff, until now silent in the corner, stepped forward and placed a heavy hand on Harlow's shoulder. "You're under arrest," he said flatly. Harlow's face twisted. He jerked back, mouth open to shout, but before the words could come, Cross made a break for the side door. He barely got 3 steps before another agent tackled him to the polished wood floor. In the chaos, Lucas sat still, silent, steady. Justice didn't need screaming. Justice spoke for itself later. Standing outside under the heavy Oregon rain, Lucas leaned against the railing of the old courthouse steps. The town hall bustled behind him, people talking, arguing, shouting, crying. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the rain soak through his shirt and let it wash away months of fear and betrayal. Agent Marks appeared at his side, her hair pulled back, face grim but satisfied. "You did good," she said simply. Lucas shook his head. "I didn't do anything." Marks smiled thinly. "You stayed standing. Sometimes that's enough." Across the square, Lucas saw some of his old neighbors, people who had shunned him only days ago now, huddling together, faces pale, whispering apologies he didn't need to hear. Forgiveness would come later. Maybe trust would take longer, but Marin Bay was his home again. Not because a piece of paper said so, because he had earned it. By fighting, by refusing to back down, as the town's battered spirit began to stitch itself back together, Lucas Grant stood tall in the storm, a quiet guardian of a place he loved too much to surrender. He didn't need the crowd's approval. He didn't need the headlines. He had something better, peace, justice, and the unshakable knowledge that when the darkness came knocking, he hadn't flinched.